Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 366, and today's guest is Graham Brooks, partner at 406 Ventures. Data is the new oil. It's a slogan that you hear everywhere these days. It's on TV commercials, print ads, LinkedIn posts, but this is not a new trend or revelation for Graham. His interest in data goes back to his first job out of college, and his passion for data has followed him throughout his career, including in his current role as the leader of 406 Ventures' data and AI strategy. 406 Ventures is a Boston-based venture capital firm with over $1.4 billion under management and nearly 2 decades of experience leading or co-leading early-stage investments in pioneering healthcare, data and AI, and cybersecurity companies founded by visionary entrepreneurs. Oh, and here's a fun fact about Graham. His sport of choice while growing up was fencing. He competed all over the world and was a 2-time All-American at Princeton. So cool. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics, like Graham's thoughts on AI and the investment outlook for 2025, his background story including how he got into fencing, joining a Princeton startup called ALK Associates, which was early AI for data cleansing that was acquired by Trimble, learning sales and fundraising as part of the founding team at Accentus after he received his MBA at Dartmouth, Graham's journey to landing a job in venture capital, which was intentional, plus he shares some great advice for others who are interested in this career path, the details about 406 Ventures and its thesis-driven approach, plus portfolio company examples and their investment process, his passion for extreme sports, and so much more. Okay, now a brief word from our podcast sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank. I'm excited to share that this podcast is brought to you by one of the strongest longtime supporters of the local startup ecosystem, that being Silicon Valley Bank, a division of First Citizens Bank. SVB serves innovative tech, healthcare, and life sciences companies, including 60% of CNBC's Disruptor 50 list, 72% of Forbes Cloud 100 list, and 48% of Forbes AI 50 list companies. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Graham. Graham, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, excited to be here, Keith. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. We go way back. I feel like we've known each other for quite some time now, which is a good thing. Yet, like now it's like, man, we were just talking, the kids are getting older, and it's just like one of those points where it's like, wow, been around in the Boston tech scene for a long time now. So I think this podcast is overdue too. So I'm excited to talk about your background story and obviously all the great work you and the team at 406 are up to, and then some other information from there. But before we get into all that, we're recording this in January 2025. Obviously, everyone's into this new year excitement. Is this going to be a year where there's, new funding activity and maybe M&A and all these positive startup momentum signs? Obviously, the word AI is everywhere, right? So I wanted to get your kind of crystal ball look of, what do you expect to see in the year ahead?
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but obviously my lens has always been data and AI for the 17 years I've been at 406, and then as an operator before that. So it is going to take a little bit of that bent as I look at things. On the funding side and M&A side, before we get into sort of the specifics around the AI stuff. I am actually very hopeful going into 25 with the election behind us, with the amount of dry powder that's sitting on the sidelines, both in the later stage venture scene as well as, the acquirers and the large the tech companies. I think that there's going to be a heavy opening up, first driven by the PE funds that'll probably be looking at sort of maybe some smaller tuck-in acquisitions to their platforms, and then more into sort of the large tech acquirers coming in and bolstering their teams and products. So I think we're pretty bullish that the exit side is going to open, may lead to sort of an IPO window. I think later in the year, that's likely a second half of the year thing. And then as you start seeing distributions come out, I think that's going to open up, the late stage funding that has been, fairly tightly closed over the last probably 18 months. On the AI side, I mean, look, I think that we are very much in an AI hype curve. I actually expect that to continue for probably another 6 to 12 months. I think you were seeing just such a level of new technology coming out that it's continuing to spark the excitement for buyers, for the public, et cetera. And so you obviously had the whole GPT launch that was sort of the hype and the excitement over the last couple of years. And then over the last 6 months, it was really around agentic and how you're going to actually able to enable the AI to interact with the world around it. And I think that you're going to see a lot of agentic things continue to happen, and that driving a lot of the hype. And then but the issue here is that enterprise adoption of AI is still incredibly anemic. And so I think that I do really firmly believe that we are in an unsustainable hype curve until that sort of really aligns out.
Which is interesting, right? So enterprises, right? So you've got these founders like, okay, well, this is a perfect use case for AI in the enterprise. Yet the enterprises are like, whoa, we're not ready to do this yet. Like, because they must be thinking like, let's say pharma, right? It's like regulated industry, fintech, right? It's like we can't just start doing things that aren't part of whatever has been authorized by the SEC or FDA or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting on a big part of it, right? I mean, this obviously is a probabilistic technology, right? That is not, you can't, once it's tough to recreate, errors once they've happened. It's tough to understand or impossible to understand why they happened. And the accuracy rates are always, there is hallucinations. That's never going to go away with these technologies. And so I think the three things that are really holding people back is obviously all the data privacy security stuff, bias that is out there. The second is, I would argue, unrealistic expectations. I think people are sort of playing with things and seeing like, well, look, it's writing all my emails for me and I'm getting all this amazing productivity. But when you actually try and get down in there and measure the ROI, they're seeing 25 to 50% accelerations, and they had that they were going to be fully automating things or getting to 100% acceleration. And the line businesses don't want to go to the CEO and say, we can only get 25% boost with this technology, and so that's creating some hurdles. And then I think the last one is obviously the accuracy stuff, right? I mean, I think even with a lot of the RAG technologies and other technologies that you're using to really try and reduce hallucination, you're seeing between 60 and 80% accuracy rates, and for many use cases, that's just not high enough.
Yeah, that's great input. All right, let's rewind the clock. So, where did you grow up? What were you like as a child?
It's a broad question. So I grew up in Rochester, New York. So I say that I'm one of the few people that moved to Boston for the weather. Given that how snowy and cold and cloudy Rochester was, but it was a great place to grow up. It was sort of in the heyday of Kodak. My parents were both, one was a doctor and the other was a dentist. So came from the medical side and quickly realized that I wanted nothing to do with being a doctor, or the medical side of things. I was a very geeky child, so started programming early back in the basics days, on the Commodore 64, and sort of really fell in love with that. And so, was a computer gamer and a fencer. So I don't know that it gets any geekier than that.
My first computer was a Texas Instruments
Nice.
TI 99 4A.
Yep. We didn't have one, but I remembered them. Yeah.
I wanted the Commodore 64 because I think they had a cool G.I. Joe game that I didn't have. Or I think they had the first Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird one-on-one basketball game. And I was like, oh, I used to go to my neighbor's house and be like, oh, they didn't have it for my computer. Anyways, awesome. One of the fun facts that I love about your background is the fencing piece. So I'm not going to skip over that. So you were part of the United States competing team as a teenager in high school, right?
Yeah, I was a part of the cadet team, so it wasn't the full national team, but it was the national team for my age group. And so I competed across Europe a number of times, multiple World Cups, and then the World Championships in Germany.
So fencing is one of those sports where you watch it from the Olympics and you're like, how does someone get involved in fencing? So how does that happen?
So I mentioned that my father was a pediatrician. He was part of the academic staff at University of Rochester, and so he did his sabbatical over in England. So I spent my 8th grade year in England, and as part of the school that I attended there, they offered fencing, and I pretty quickly fell in love with it. And graduated from beating up my sister with the tubes from the wrapping paper to actually trying to figure it out.
Very cool. Okay, so then you went on to study computer science at Princeton, and you also competed in fencing there. And maybe you're going to be humble, so I'm just going to say it: 2-time All-American. So you're very good at your sport. Like, is that something that a sport that you get recruited for, like others
Yep.
in the Ivies? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely sort of an important sport for many schools. But Princeton had a very, very strong team, and we're placing top in the NCAA's every year, and they've won it a couple times since I graduated.
That's so cool. Yeah, I assume so it's the Ivies and lots of other schools have a program as well. Like I know the Ivies all have it, but I wasn't sure.
But Penn State's really, really good. Ohio State's really good. Duke is really good. So I mean, it's very spread.
So who was your nemesis? Like what school?
Uh, I'd say the two nemesises for me were Yale and UPenn. Probably. We competed them at the sort of the Ivy League, the league that we played in, and then nationally. And I had a bunch of friends from the national circuit before that went to those two schools. So
Got it. Okay.
it was always good to reconnect with them.
Did you ever consider pursuing like an Olympic?
I considered it, and I think Rochester bizarrely had a very, very strong program. So the year that I was on the world team, there was 15 people on the world team total across all the different weapons. So there's 5 different weapons, and I think 8 of us came from Rochester. From the units. So it was a very, very strong program. A lot of my teammates went on to the Olympics, both from Rochester as well as from Princeton. And I considered it, but I really was excited to get in and to start my career.
Oh, cool. I love that. That's such a cool thing. Fun fact. I always pick up these little tidbits of each person in these podcasts, and I'm like, no way. All right. So what did you do after graduation?
So I had a habit of tech transfer. It's been a big part of my focus, and so I actually worked with a professor. He had started a company a number of years ago. It was about a 200-person spin out of Princeton, and I joined that as initially as a software engineer, focusing a lot on as a DBA, so a database administrator, so structuring databases, in the transportation space, is where the company was, a company called ALK Associates, sold to Trimble. And actually went to the CEO about 6 months after I'd started and sort of saw an opportunity to create a new product, and so sold them on the vision. And really what it was doing is early AI for data cleaning. So a lot of the data that they were getting that was driving a lot of the analysis for a couple different products was very, very dirty. And there were sort of a lot of fuzzy matching and early ML techniques that we could use to clean that data and better present where your supply chain actually was.
And for context, because you said this is early AI. I mean, this is 19...
This is in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, 99, 98 timeframe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. Okay, so this is also the when you talk about the new product, you started to branch out from being an engineer into sales and other roles.
Yeah, and so after we built the product, I went back to the CEO and said, "Look, this has been my baby. I really want to take it to market." And so started carrying a bag, going out and selling this to large brands. We were doing a lot with the car companies because it was a rail oriented supply chain product, and so I went and closed the first couple deals, got really sort of got comfortable with everything from making the initial cold call out through the close. And I think that was a really important time for me because this sales is incredibly important. It's something that they don't teach at schools, which is one of my big complaints. I think it's something that no matter where you go, whatever you do, you need to understand how to do sales, and it is way more mathematical than a lot of people realize. And having the confidence to go and structure those conversations, have the conversations, do the cold outreaches, and then help someone walk through the journey that they're going to need to go to actually close the sales it's a piece of advice I give my children and all the entrepreneurs that I talk to. Is that it's very, very important.
Same. Like I think some schools are starting to implement more sales approaches, which is great because I mean they didn't forever, and I'm just like, how do you not teach this to all students, not just maybe someone interested in sales?
I totally agree.
Yeah, no, it's just such an important component. So, all right, so after ALK, you decided to go back to B school at Dartmouth Tux. So, what prompted that decision?
So I again sort of had transitioned a little bit to the business side and that sales role, and really wanted to build out a broader depth of experience to make that full transition. I loved coding, but I'm probably a little less detail oriented than the best coders, and wanted to really sort of sit at that intersection point between sort of the highly technical and the business or customer oriented people, and so business school really for me was to facilitate that transition.
All right, so what did you do after Dartmouth?
So back to the tech transfer theme, partnered with a local CEO and a grad student at Dartmouth, and we spun a company out of Dartmouth selling data analytics down to Wall Street, and was part of the founding team there, and really there from day one, and focused on the sales and marketing, and again how to bring that product to market. So it was a great experience.
So what did you learn from this experience?
For me, again, it was sort of seeing the early stages of company creation. So was involved in wrote the business plan, was very involved in the fundraising. That was my sort of first deep exposure into the venture side of the ecosystem. And then again on the customer success and sales side, and selling something when you've got zero brand is very different than selling something when you've got a material brand and or scale, and so walking through that and seeing the growth that we were able to achieve there was really exciting.
So what did you learn from the fundraising experience back then? Because your LinkedIn says develop significant scar tissue from fundraising in 2002.
Yeah, so it was a very tough time, obviously coming off the bubble, and so I think it was we were raising what's now known as pre-seed and seed, but we were going to a lot of the local venture firms, sort of at that point was Route 128, just Winter Street over there, and going from fund to fund to fund. And understanding sort of what it was to fit into someone's thesis and how they looked at the world, and then the building blocks that you do to put together a round, right? So I think our pre-seed, we started with looking at funds, and then went down sort of more the super angel route, to put that together and close our first couple of customers off of that, and then went back out looking at the larger firms. But it was a very tough time to be raising, and lucky that we were able to raise some significant funding, but not enough to sort of get through to escape velocity.
So what ended up happening to Accentus?
The company ended up shutting down. I think, again, lots of scar tissue and lessons learned. A big one was around sort of the go-to-market side and how do you do a scalable go-to-market, right? In matching price points to, the total cost of customer acquisition.
Interesting data point that you brought up. So Jay Batson, who was, founding CEO of Acquia, he was on our podcast, and I did a little carve out video from our conversation because I'm like, so he was an advisor or mentor for Mass Challenge and Techstars companies. So I'm like, what's the most common thing that you see entrepreneurs missing? And he's like, go to market, a scalable, repeatable business, like a sales process that can scale to extraordinary proportions. So dead on.
No, I think that's spot on, right? And I think that people like, I encourage people to not go in the middle. Either go sort of product-led, sales-led growth, or down the sort of true enterprise sales. I think it's when you try and mix the two that it gets dangerous. That you're taking signal from one, like I'm getting sales because I'm spending way too much time, and it doesn't scale, and or people are buying for different reasons, right? It's that repeatability that's absolutely critical.
All right. So what'd you do next?
So after ALK, I took after Accentus, I took my one jaunt out of the data and AI space and spent a couple of years at Bose, looking at their internal venturing group. So for me, Accentus really exposed me to sort of the venture side of things, and I decided that really was the path that I wanted to go down. And I saw the internal venturing as sort of a halfway step. So it was half my job was on the operating side, half was sort of really on the investing side, both in internal, new projects. And this is where, we ended up doing something around baby products, around like baby monitors, baby bottles, et cetera. And then second was on, looking at external products. And that eventually led to my last year there. I did a lot of sort of early corp dev work for them.
All right, another fun fact. Your name is on a patent for real-time self-heating baby bottle to body temp in 10 seconds technology.
Yes.
Which Bose was working on. Like I read that, I'm like, interesting market for them to consider.
Yeah. So, I mean, the internal venturing group, this is one of the challenges with entrepreneuring. But we had sort of anchored around a baby monitor, which makes a lot of sense. But there was a couple other products that the company had that could be sold into their technologies that the company had that could be sold into the baby group. And so one of the ones that we spent a bunch of time around was this baby bottle that used sort of a wax that was tuned to body temperature to that state transition from liquid to or solid to liquid gives off a tremendous amount of energy, and use that to heat the formula or milk. And I think this is back to when my two girls were in that stage, and so it's definitely a really fun to be working on a product that I could explain at home, et cetera.
We're out of those years, but back then that would have been super helpful for travel. So I remember my sister-in-law used to carry around like a little device or something that she would put the bottle in to heat it up.
It would take 5 minutes or something like that while the child screaming for yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. So after Bose, you finally landed into ventures. So how did you land at 406 Ventures?
Yeah. So, I mean, I moved to 406 in 2007 as an associate. From Accentus to Bose to 406 was a very plotted path for me, trying to move from that, operational side into the investing side. And I spent quite a bit of time, building on the connections that I'd made while I was pitching Accentus into the Boston ecosystem. And I think my advice to people, and this is the advice that I followed, is when you're looking to get into venture, you need to figure out what your edge is, even very early, like what makes you different, how can you demonstrate, that people should be taking a risk on you. And for me, there was two key pieces of advice that I got, as I was looking to make that transition. As I was regularly setting up calls with venture capitalists from the community, and talking to them, and was able to get those. But every one of those conversations would start by them saying, "We're not hiring." I said, "Fine, I'm just looking to get to know you and understand the firm, et cetera." And it was John Carlin from Flybridge at the time, who, after 5 minutes of talking, he was like, "Well, we're not hiring you." And I was like, "Well, you told me that you aren't hiring." And he said, "VCs are never hiring and they're always hiring, right?" And he said, "If you can convince me that you're going to make me money, and you can do something uniquely that I can't do, then we'll figure that out." So that was sort of a seminal piece of advice that I took. And the second was really around sort of like, well, what's stopping you from being a VC? And so I actually went out and built a portfolio of about 30 companies that I was helping fundraise, and used that as my real edge. So I was able to demonstrate, access to deal flow, understanding of due diligence, and it transitioned the conversations that I was having with these firms from, the classic, tell me about yourself, to, I looked at your portfolio. Here's 3 companies that I'm talking to that I think might be a really good fit. Here's what I like about them. Here's the diligence that I'd want to do. And I used that to eventually get a couple offers, and was really excited to find an opportunity at 406.
I hope you are enjoying this interview. Just a brief word from our sponsor. As a longtime champion in the local startup ecosystem, Silicon Valley Bank supports innovative companies with the solutions and financing they need through every stage of growth. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. Well, that's powerful advice for any profession right there, because you could have just sat there and just kept interviewing, saying, "Hey, I'm smart. I, was early at one company. I co-founded another company, and like Bose, right?" Like,
Yep.
no, you started doing the job and actually being a practitioner to demonstrate that you can do the job, even though you weren't in the seat, and built that portfolio. And like, if you did all that work and you show that to a venture capitalist, they're gonna be like, "Oh, he's serious about this," one, but two, he shows the intellectual raw horsepower for the job and what it entails in itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting a job in venture is all about differentiation and that edge, and so figuring out how to demonstrate that is critical.
Very cool. All right, so you started out as an associate. You're a partner now. So one of the things that I think, so it sounds like you were very driven to be NVC, to rise to a partner. Like, but there's other folks that join as an associate, senior associate, do maybe like a 2-4 year tour of duty, and then it's kind of like a path that's expected. They come in, they come out. So what's that like for people? Like, just trying to educate other people about the different paths in venture.
I think most VC firms have sort of partner track positions and non-partner track positions, and I, as an associate, I was in a non-partner track position. I made one of the reasons I chose 406, among many, was that there was potential for a partner track position. And so for me, the first couple of years was really about trying to develop my expertise, again, further my edge, and start building the track record towards that, trying to get into a true partner track position. And I think that the alternative is a great path, which is come into venture for a couple of years. You can learn a lot, and then often you go back into an operating role for a little bit. And I think that that is, I would argue, the preferred path. I'd had almost a decade of operating experience prior across both large and smaller companies, and so I felt like it was the best thing for me was to, especially because I was really excited about 406, sort of our differentiation and the team and portfolio that we'd assembled.
Okay, so 406 are like, Graham, come on in, you're our associate. So what did those first few years look like as you were building your network, your reputation, both internally, externally with entrepreneurs, and like what does the job entail? I don't know if people kind of have this conceptual view of what it entails, but what's reality?
So I would take all of that and down to the single word, which is hustle. You are just looking for opportunities to help. Different firms are a little bit different, right? So there's, especially the larger firms, they might have sort of a very, stayed track, like, associates do this, analysts do this, principals do this, and you sort of march up through a very prescriptive path. At 406, my role honestly hasn't changed substantially from when I was an associate to now as a partner. The difference is in there I was in a supporting role, but doing all the same stuff, and now I'm in obviously leading deals. So back then it was about building the network, driving the deal flow, and then executing on the deals, whether it's on the diligence side, negotiating the deals, or working with the company post investment. So I think within 3 months I was already a observer on one board, and building from there. And I think we start everyone as a generalist, so you work with multiple partners, which was really helpful. So I got to learn a tremendous amount from the founding partners, Liam Donahue, Maria Serino, and Larry Begley.
All right, well, let's talk about 406. So obviously the name speaks for itself. Ted Williams, right?
Yeah.
Which I love. I love the parallels of greatness. But talk about the firm, like stage, fund size, like all the details.
Yep. So we raised Fund 5 about a year and a half ago. It's a $265 million fund. We've got just under $1.4 billion under management across our 5 core funds, and then we have 3 opportunity funds as well that enable us to write the larger checks in the later rounds into our portfolio. So on the core fund, our strategy is seed and Series A. So tend to go very early, especially in the data and AI group. We are very focused. So if you look at sort of how we talk about our differentiation, it really is around a focus, and that focus manifests itself in a couple different ways. First, we build concentrated portfolios, so it's only 20-ish companies a fund, which means that even when we do a seed or a pre-seed bet, it takes one of those 20 slots, and that's the most sort of scarce resource for us is the number of slots. And so what that means is that we do a fair amount of diligence, even for those early companies. But our graduation rate from those seed to companies that raise A's either from us or others is in the high 90s. So we don't do any of the what interesting team, let's give you some money and see if it sticks, right? This sort of spray and pray. So that's one piece. The second way that the focus manifests is in our areas. So the fund has been focused on data and AI, healthcare, and cybersecurity since its inception. We invest only in those areas. So outside of that, it's not going to be a fit with us. But then even within those areas, we're very thesis driven. So we have spent a lot of time talking to buyers, enterprises, to understand sort of how they're looking at the world, what problems they see coming down the pipe in 2 to 3 years. We try and figure out and triangulate where the puck is going, and then looking to invest in those companies. So my favorite investments have both positive and negative diligence, right? And it's about sort of seeing through and figuring out, is this something that is going to be solving a problem that may not be obvious today, but is going to be obvious in 2 years.
Well, you talked about your focus and the firm's focus, partly data and AI strategy. That must be such a competitive advantage from the role that you're sitting in, as compared to other firms that with the platform shift, they're trying to ramp up that competency and knowledge, and sitting down with an entrepreneur who's deeply knowledgeable about their craft.
It's been very interesting because so I've been doing this for coming up on 18 years now. We have been through multiple market cycles, as well as multiple hype cycles around sort of the data and AI space, right? So I think this is our second AI wave that we've seen, and then when we did the big data hype cycle back in 2015, and so again, understand what are the things that are new, because there's absolutely a lot of new paradigms that need to be thought through as we think about which companies are going to be able to live through this, as well as what's the same, right? I don't subscribe to the idea that AI changes everything, where this is a totally new paradigm. I think there's a lot of aspects of traditional entrepreneurship and enterprise sales that are going to exist, and it's going to be sort of a more measured growth than what some people have been thinking. So I think that the focus and longevity of that we've had in the space really enables us to jump from the early conversation into the meat very quickly. So we have I think 7-8 theses that we're actively pursuing. That means that we have already sort of vetted and gotten conviction that this is an area that's really important. We know all the competitors. We've often talked to many of them, and so when we come in and talk to a probably heavy technical founder, we often skip through the first 5, 6, 7 slides because I don't really need a primer on the market. I don't need to understand your differentiation. What I want to focus on is like, how are you going to market? What is the uniqueness of your technology?
And if you're that deep in a space and you don't see a company trying to solve that, 406 will incubate companies too, right?
Yeah, we do it probably once or twice a fund because it's a lot of work. But it's a really interesting space, and it's an area that we're incubating one in the data AI space right now, where we've gotten a tremendous amount of conviction. We actually often will have buyers for the technology in advance of having the technology or even a team to go after it. So within 406, because the process that we use to create these theses, we're talking to these buyers regularly, and so. We'll have identified buyers that have the need. We'll validate that the technology can deliver on it, sort of from a POC or proof of concept space, and then it's about recruiting the team, and that's often the hardest part, right? Is finding people that share the vision enough, and we always make sure that we leave a lot of rough edges on the vision until we recruit the team, and because it is still early stage. They need to own the vision and the direction of the company, and then take it from there. But I think in most cases here we partner sort of someone that's very deeply technical with someone that comes more out of the buyer or the business side.
So what are some portfolio company examples?
So, I think as we think about the data and AI space, which is where I spend all of my time, we break our companies into 3 categories. So, data infrastructure, which is really how do you provide the right data to the different people, applications, et cetera, at the right time. So this is data quality, data governance, data storage, data querying, all those types of technologies. The second group is AI infrastructure. And so this is the infrastructure that enterprise companies will need to be able to launch their own AI companies. And then the last is sort of applied AI or AI applications. So I talked really quickly about a company each. So back in 2015, I mentioned that we were sort of going through this big data hype. And again, I'd say there's a lot of similarities between how people are approaching that and what we're seeing on the AI side. Where everyone was really focused on the analytics that you could achieve, and while we were excited about that, all the enterprise buyers were like, yes, that's great, but my data's a mess. It's spread everywhere. It's really hard to get it cleaned, and so we invested in a company called Reltio, which was the leading master data management company that was sort of net native, built on graph technologies, and was sort of pioneering that. And what we saw was the hype break on the analytics side, the big data side, and a lot of those dollars got reallocated back into, okay, look, when the next wave comes, we want to be prepared. So we need to be starting to spend on getting our infrastructure there so that we have the data. It's not all my customers aren't spread across 30 different customer databases. I have a single, a view of my customer. I know, all the products that you've bought. I know how many customers that I have, et cetera. I mean, it still shocks me. Many companies cannot answer that question. They don't know how many customers they have.
Yeah, very, very shocking.
Yeah. Oh. And it's great. Reltio is now a very large company, well north of 100 million in ARR, growing, so it's been really exciting to sort of see that steady progress that they've achieved there. That second category is our AI infrastructure. I'll talk about one of our more recent investments. You heard sort of tech transfer is a big part of my career. It's a big part of what we do here at 406 as well. And so we've built, deep relationships into, universities, labs across the country. And then, a lot of professors, grad students, or students that are creating companies, it's a big step for them to move from a deeply technical hands-on keyboard type role to running a company. And so we've brought in groups of advisors and put together a bit of a playbook around sort of how to move that tech transfer through. And my colleague Kevin Wong has been leading this effort. But one of the companies that we invested in recently is a company called RapidFire. It's a professor out of UCSD. And they have technology that is going to enable enterprises to much more easily train and fine-tune their models using a fraction of the GPUs and in a much more robust way. And effectively the way models are trained today is it's, I train one model, I go and measure or fine tune a model. I go measure the output. Did it work? What was the accuracy? What was the implications? I go back. I tweak the parameters. I tweak the inputs and configurations. And I go run it again. And what RapidFire enables is that you to set up and test many different model configurations, parameters, et cetera, at once and train them simultaneously. See their progress while they're being trained and allocate those resources more effectively. And so, showing about a 50% increase or decrease in GPU cost and a 2 to 3x increase in speed from, initial train to a publishable model. The thing that really excites us there is it's based on about a decade of research that the professor has been doing in his lab. Lots of open source, and now we're in the process of productizing that.
A decade long of research. So
yeah, but that's AI has been around for 60 years, and so I think that there's the idea that in 2018, 2019, that things changed substantially is not true. This has been sort of an eventual wave. And actually the last company I was going to mention is a local company called Indico, which has been at the forefront of AI. They started as a deep research company, actually out of the Olin School near Babson, and it was two roommates and then two of their friends that founded the company. It was an early Techstars company. And we got involved at the pre-seed raise, and they did a lot of the early research around tech, sort of unstructured data analytics and transfer learning, which is a lot of the technology that's behind sort of what we're seeing with generative AI. And they sell their product out to insurance companies, and financial services. So this is an example of the applied AI side, but based in very, very deep research.
But entrepreneurs working on a company that is in one of those functional areas that you outlined, those three different sectors.
Yep.
Like, what's the best way to get a hold of you, and what do you expect out of a first meeting, and then what's the process if they pass beyond that?
Yep. So the best way is to either get a warm intro or honestly just drop me an email. My email's on the website. We look at everything that comes in. The biggest and first bar for us is, it doesn't match an open thesis, right? Is this an area that we already have conviction, or is it something that we would have to completely come up to speed on? And so if you're in an area that we have conviction, we have an open thesis, we're going to take the meeting. So I do meet with a lot of entrepreneurs that do cold outreaches, but it needs to be, not only in one of these three areas, but also within a thesis within these areas, right? It needs to sell into the enterprise, et cetera. And then the process for us is, we take a first quick meeting. So it's often a half hour. I want to sort of, again, get past the market stuff and really get into the product, your differentiation and your background. Cause the team is by far the most important thing for us. And then it's the vision of what you're building. Right. If we get conviction on those two, it matches an open thesis. At that point, we enter a robust but accelerated diligence process, and it really involves a bunch of calls that we set up on your behalf. basically connecting, the entrepreneurs to customers. So we have a council of 40 different large Fortune 100 companies, C-levels at those companies. So it's CTOs, CIOs, chief data officers, chief AI officers. And, we meet with them, twice a year to understand sort of what their priorities are. That then forms our theses. And then, as we find companies that match those theses, we make the connections back up into those buyers. And they're already looking for this solution. They're primed on it. They understand it, and they're excited to meet really cutting edge companies that are answering it.
Very, very cool. All right. So one of the things that 406 has as well is a student fellows program. What is that?
So that was something that we started back in 2008. So we've been doing it for a long time, and we obviously, being in Boston, great universities, we went to MIT and found that there was a lot of connections between MIT and the capital community, but even Harvard at that time, or many of the other universities locally, they didn't have strong connections into the capital community, and so we sort of looked at two different types of programs when we were evaluating this. One was focused on more sort of the analyst type. So, getting someone that can really represent us on campus and go source deals for us. And the second one was really trying to focus on more the serial entrepreneur type. So, meeting people that are, in our sectors and going to go start multiple companies, have started companies in the past, and sort of, that path versus the venture path as their desired. And we actually settled on the latter. And so the Student Fellows Program is really designed for serial entrepreneurs. It's a very tight network. We have a class of 10 to 20 student fellows. It's a 2-year program. Not a huge time commitment. But we do meet every other week. And the goal is to really foster a very strong network from people across the country. And so as the program evolved, we have undergraduate students, we have MBAs, we have MDs, we have PhDs. So age range is anywhere from 18 to late 20s, and it's really looking for people that have that strong commitment to the serial entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship as their career path. And that network then and the programming that we have here helps sort of accelerate them in that career path, but also what they're doing as they're building their own companies while they're in school.
All right. We talked about some of your sample portfolio companies that you've invested in that you're a part of. I always like to ask the question, like, what are the misses, the anti-portfolio?
Yeah. So a couple, I'd love to say that I had none, but I think every venture person has things that they look back on. So actually back to, my getting into venture, one of the companies that was in my portfolio of companies that I was bringing around to VCs was the Echo Nest. We came close. We were thinking about putting in a term sheet, but it couldn't get there because it was a little bit new for the partners here. And I was obviously very, very new and great company, great team, really excited about what they've done, both at Econest and then obviously acquired by Spotify, and they the two technical founders are still at Spotify. And then
well, I just want to give a side. I always say this whenever the Econest comes up or Spotify, because I'm just like, it makes me like, just being a cheerleader for the Boston tech scene. Yeah. It makes me so proud that all the personalization, at least as far as I'm aware, maybe I'm wrong, but that originated and it continues from Boston. All that, and it gets better and better I'm just like, man, Spotify really and it's diverse. It's not like just a lane. It's like broadens my lanes. So it's really, really rich and good.
That stems back to how they architected the solution. It's a combination of both music analysis as well as really understanding how it was being discussed online. So it was exciting. And then the other one I'll talk about is Starburst. I'd known Justin for a long time. He's a great guy. We looked at Hadapt, which is his previous company, and I think I was one of the first, if not the first, person to take a look at Starburst. But at the time, an open source project that he was running while he was still at Teradata. And the founders of the open source project were over at Facebook. And so it was this interesting configuration. And then I think the pricing that he was able to get was sort of not a fit for 406, but continue to stay very close to Justin, and a huge fan of what he's doing at Starburst.
Yeah, great team. So what's the vibe of the Boston tech scene now?
I think it's good. I mean, it's very good, right? The rooting of especially the AI wave that we're in academia, well positions Boston. Obviously you've got the MITs and Harvards, but all the other schools are doing really interesting research. They've got AI centers. They're putting a lot of money into this space, and I think we're seeing a lot of interesting things come out. And I think the big difference is that, if you go to San Francisco, and the Valley, you've got many people that are sort of looking to learn AI, reinvent themselves in AI. Whereas the Boston, the people that are starting the companies usually have a deep, long experience and career already in AI, whether it's in academics or a business. And so I'm very excited. I mean, the last couple investments that about half of the investments in our recent fund have been in the Boston area.
Yeah, I'm very bullish. It's just like it got a little sleepy, as did every tech community. I mean, it just was the downturn of the tech industry due to lots of circumstances. But this, heading into 2025, and just so much momentum coming at the end of 2024. So it's a lot of good stuff. All right, 3 apps you can't live without. It can't be email, Slack, or your calendar.
As I look at my job, I think the 2 most important things that I do are learn and connect. And so as I thought about the apps, it's falling into those categories. So most of my learning comes from the OpenAI and Gemini and Anthropics of the world. I cycle through them. I was in a Gemini's phase in late 24. After going to NeurIPS, which is the leading AI conference, spending a lot of time with the OpenAI team, I'm in the process of transitioning back to GPT as my primary learn side app. The second big pillar of the learn for me, or learning to start and connect, is Discord, Reddit. I think that's where a lot of the conversations are happening, and we look at venture as sitting between sort of enterprise buyers and technologies. And so the enterprise buyers, I have the relationships, I have the direct connects, I go directly to them. And then these Discord, Reddit, is how and then the conversations with the people at the universities, labs, et cetera. That's how I stay on top of what's happening in the technology world. And then last is on the connect side, I'd say, is LinkedIn. It's just become absolutely critical, and it facilitates moving from the digital into sort of more personalized experiences, and because we are so thesis based, I'd say more of our companies are we actually do outreach too, versus sort of inbound.
LinkedIn's very interesting, because it's like, it has its faults like anything, but it's just become more relevant, right? And I don't know, like Microsoft bought it and that was a great purchase. Have they just had it stand alone and not mess it up? What I mean? Like it's just continued to become more relevant.
It absolutely has. I think that, I'm frustrated that it hasn't evolved faster, because I think most people I know are using it as their new contact database. And yet a lot of the core features, aren't there. I mean, it's very good at connecting, but I almost exclusively use it for first, maybe second degree connections. And I wish I had a better ability to sort of organize my first degree connections and understand it and analyze them.
Yeah. And, being in the talent world, I should be able to write a chat GPT like query of like looking for a first time founder that, like just something that it's like, here's your network. Like,
yeah. Yep.
Not have to go through the filters of the manual tedious process. So anyway.
But thankfully, large companies buying small companies and then not bringing them to their fruition is why we have jobs. So
True. All right. Podcast or book recommendation for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So more on the podcast side. I think for me, spent a lot of time trying to stay on top of again the technology. So the two that I am religious on are the DeepMind podcast with Hannah Fry, and then the AI Daily Brief. I find they do a really good job, sort of just making sure that I understand sort of what's being seen at labs and academia, OpenAI, Google, et cetera, and then can use that as a building block to the thesis stuff that we do.
All right, outside of work, what do you like to do for fun?
Um, so I try and spend as much time outside, and so it was ski, a big skier. I'm actually a mono skier, so not a ton of people out there that do that. And then I do a lot of water sports in the summer, so scuba, kite surf, et cetera.
Hey, you're big at that kite surfing, from what I remember.
Yeah, no, it's been a big focus. I'm in the process of trying to learn to wing, which is a next generation of kite surf, which is so I'm spending a lot of time, drinking local Boston water.
That's awesome. Cool. All right, Graham. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through your background story. Obviously, all the great work you and the team at 406 Ventures are up to, and obviously all the great advice.
Awesome. Well, Keith, really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for having me.